It is Wednesday, my dudes, and you know what you know what that means, don't you? It means that I have lost the ability to speak, but further to this, it also means that we need to revisit Mistletoe Peak, the Christmas/winter themed park that I'm currently building in Planet Coaster, and this week is a special week because we're building the first actually Christmas themed ride, and by that I mean a ride in Planet Coaster specifically themed around Christmas. It's going to be a sleigh ride. I mean, it's essentially a reskinned version of the car ride, but it has like Santa sleigh cars, and when the cars move along it plays a nice little Christmas song. So it's pretty neato. The actual track itself is fairly simplistic and looks awful. Don't worry, we do end up heavily theming this so it doesn't look terrible, I suppose. So do bear with it. Do bear with me this series. Pretty much a mantra for this entire channel, really, but not just Planet Coaster, but there we go. So there's the actual general layout. There'll be a few tweaks, twists and turns all the way along the video, guys, so make sure you watch it to the end. Leave a like, comment and subscribe. Buy my merch. My Instagram is in the description, so is my Twitter and my Discord. I think I've got all that stuff out of the way. So what is there to talk about with sleigh rides? Well, the sleigh ride was first created by Mr. Sleigh, Stanley Sleigh, in 1957. He and his wife, Mary Rollercoaster, went on to create many more forms of theme park ride. And this is a true fact that I'm not making up on the spot. You can Google this and be taken to this video, probably. This is probably the only video that's ever disclosed this information. Regardless, this is actually the first time I've ever attempted one of the flat ride. This is like the track rides. It's also a flat ride, like the Ghost Train in Planet Coaster. I've never tried anything like that, just because I'm always quite intimidated by the prospect of doing very heavy scenery and things like that. Like for a Ghost Train, you've got to make lots of spooky scenery, and I've always found it quite difficult. I think I was able to get away with it with the sleigh ride because it's more like an outdoorsy sort of thing, right? Lots of snowy vistas, the sleigh cruising along outside Santa's workshop, so it may be a little bit easier to build a sleigh ride than necessarily a Ghost Train. I guess the same could be said for the car rides, though. They're generally all outside as well, so maybe going forward, maybe when we go back to Neptune Park, I'll do a car ride or something to apply everything I learned in this ride. I know people have said that they're kind of bored of Neptune Park from the comments, so I will only be doing a couple more episodes of Neptune Park before I wrap that up and do something else, because I feel like it's kind of, the Neptune Park sort of ended and then it didn't really have a conclusion. Like, we need to do a tour of the park and stuff like that, and I don't know, Neptune Park is... I really like Neptune Park still, so we'll have to finish that series off. Then I might start the Space Park or something like that. I'll have to try and learn how to use Theme Maker's Toolkit so I can import Blender model. I should probably import a Blender model of Santa. I'm kind of waiting for more creators who are actually good at Blender to create things, and I'll just use those. But maybe I'll incorporate like a Santa model or something into the park. Part of me with have I discussed this yet? I mentioned Theme Maker's Toolkit to one of my mates, and his kind of attitude to it was similar to mine when I first heard of it, that whilst it's a great feature, undeniably, it might somewhat detract from the achievements people have done making things out of stock pieces. Like, you know, you look at Silverette's that big floating island thing he's done, Volvaria or something like that. That's incredible, and it's even more amazing knowing that it's made with stock parts. I think the fact that you can now just incorporate one giant 3D model in lieu of doing like actual work somewhat takes away from those sorts of achievements, really. It's a bit like the modern Lego sets. It's like, you know, back in the day, if you had to make a dumper truck, you'd have to construct the entire thing yourself, whereas now the Lego dump truck sets just have one giant piece for the actual bucket. And it's like, it doesn't really, you know, may as well just have one giant brick in the shape of a truck then. I think that was James May's criticism of the new Lego sets. I feel like it's similar to then. I think there will still be that divide, like people will always appreciate kind of purely stock things, but at the same time it's always like, why would you bother doing that when you could have just done it the easy way? So maybe it's kind of a double-edged sword. I'm ultimately happy with the Theme Maker's Toolkit, and it is definitely a good thing, but still, I don't know, I think something has been a little bit lost in the introduction of it. But don't get me wrong, it's very much a good thing that we now have it, so don't take anything else away apart from that, if nothing else. So yeah, just doing a little bridge just here, nothing special, nothing fancy. So I won't talk about it too much longer. I was trying to come up with a way of kind of looping this thing around, so there's going to be a couple of... The actual track itself is going to be just mainly going around the rocks and the snow and the trees and stuff. Then we'll add some of those snowmen that I mentioned in the last week's episode that I put in like the queue around the the queue of the roller coaster, those little snowmen blueprints. I'm going to incorporate some of those. And then the actual centerpiece of this ride is going to be this nice sort of vintage looking clock tower. I think someone suggested this in a comment section a couple of episodes back, maybe 2 or 3 episodes back, and I did say, I'm not going to do that because there's going to be a clock tower at the sleigh ride. So whoever you are, if you remember my reply to you, this is that. So hope you enjoyed, hope it was worth the wait. Not sure how, I wasn't really sure if I was liking this bridge at this point when I was making it, because the roof looks a little bit thin. I know it's very much a superficial roof because it's clearly, just supporting the bridge above, and the bridge above is going to actually act as the real roof. I thought, let's just add some sort of pseudo corrugated iron type roof sort of thing. Just by using these wooden pieces and painting them grey, you can kind of simulate a metal roof. There you go, ended up looking okay. And then I was trying to think of just things I could place around here. I could have gone all out and built like a stage with snowmen and like bands and stuff singing on, but that would take a lot of effort, And I don't know where I was in my mind at this point about whether or not I was still committing to releasing this thing before Christmas. I think I was, and part of me still thinks that I might be able to, based on how much I've been able to fit into the episodes. I know the cable car episode was a bit of an exception. I think because that structure took so long to make, I kind of forgot just how much longer that took to make than everything else. I reckon, because what we're actually doing in this episode, we're basically finishing this entire corner of the park. Just the actual crux of this video is going to be the sleigh ride, but most of this, after this is all done, we're going to be doing a lot of other things. That sort of leg of path that you might have just seen a second ago, that's all going to get finished off. And then after that, what else is there even to do? There's the other roller coaster, which actually took a long time to do, so that's going to eat up some time. And then there's the area around the Ferris wheel, but that might actually be it. I don't think there's that much more to go. I'm trying to just think what I've actually done with my life, and I don't think there's that much. I don't think there's that much more. So yeah, here's the construction of the central clock tower, by the way, that I mentioned is going to be the centerpiece for this ride. So I went with the crypt wall initially because it looked quite good in the dark, and I changed it to light, and I was like, oh, I don't know. But I think I stuck with it anyway. Oh, no, I didn't. I changed it. Yeah, because I was like, oh, it actually looks a lot more mossy and disgusting than it looked in the dark. So I changed it to just the generic castle wall. In this series, I've been generally just using either the castle pieces or the stucco pieces, depending on what kind of time period I'm trying to emulate, or what kind of, I don't know, if I'm trying to go for the Dickens look or not. So I don't know, I didn't really use any kind of muse. I think I downloaded a couple of village watchtowers from the Steam Workshop just to see what other people had done when creating them, and then created this objectively much more inferior, I'm sure that wasn't grammatically correct, version of it, but a lot of them had this sort of sticky out goiter bit near the top. I'm sure it's got a name, but we've moved on now. And so just put this around on all 4 sides. So again, I'm just doing the trick where you build one side, then just grab a piece that's locked to the grid like the walls, and then just paste it around 4 times. And bada bing bada boom, there you go. So that's pretty much it. What is that got a name, or is it just a wider part of the tower? I'm not really sure. Maybe it's like a defense system, who knows? Maybe it's like where the spa is, I don't know. Okay, so then we just add some clocks to the clock tower to make it a structurally correct clock tower, and then we can just raise up some of the terrain. I essentially did the trick where you build the track and then just mold the terrain around it, which is obviously the exact opposite of how real terrain coasters work. But for Planet Coaster, it doesn't really, it's fine. We don't have any such thing as money, and it's far easier to do it this way around than the other way around. Also because the terrain tool can be a little bit difficult to not difficult to use, but it's difficult to do it accurately. And one of the things I found as well, but on the flip side, it's also hard to do things inaccurately, like on a massive scale, such as building mountains. It takes absolutely ages. It's quicker just to make because like the brush tool, like the brush diameter is very, very small. It doesn't really do large hills and stuff easily, and it can, but it just takes a very long time. So what I did for the construction of Mistletoe Peak was I just made like one really sort of tall but narrow area of hill that looked unnatural. Then I used the flattened foundation tool, which is no bigger in terms of its brush diameter, but it acts a lot faster. Like if you want to raise something up using the terrain raising tool, it takes ages. You press it, it goes really slowly. Flattened foundation is an almost instant effect. Although it's a small diameter tool again, it doesn't take very long because you can just move the mouse around really quickly and it drags everything up nice and fast. So those are my qualms with the terrain tool. Generally, it's not too bad, but it does have its limitations, as do a lot of things in Planet Coaster that I'm sure I've mentioned ad nauseum at this point, both in this series and Crimson Tower and Mirror Lake and Neptune Park. But there we are, we're coming close to the end of the construction of this ride, really, just sort of dotting the I's and crossing the T's, that sort of thing, and then we can just sort of sort out the terrain a little bit more finally. I know now that the wall to the front of the park's a little bit pointless because the terrain comes all the way up to the height of that wall, but I feel like the remote nature of this park kind of lends itself well to acting as a security feature, a very cheap security feature. Well, I say cheap, it's probably much more expensive to maintain this park because of that, but, you know, swings and roundabouts, isn't it? So I tried to replicate the station style of the Christmas Dragon coaster, which may have a name at this point, because I did say last week in the comments, please leave a comment. That video is currently rendering right now, and I'm making this one. I'm basically trying to make as many videos as I can before I go home to my parents for Christmas, because obviously I won't be taking my PC with me, so I kind of have to make loads of videos now in order to continue having a consistent upload schedule, and at some point I want to be moving house into the new house I've bought, so that's gonna be eating up most of my free time, so I need to get as much done now so that, you know, you guys will still get all the mediocre content that you're used to from this channel. So, you know, I feel like everything I could have talked about with the construction of this station I've already discussed last week, so let's talk about something else. I did just mention that I'm going to be moving house soon. Maybe I could talk about that old chestnut. I've never actually owned a house before. I've only ever rented, so it's quite an exciting thing, but also quite intimidating. I feel like ultimately it's going to be good, but it's going to be a rough transition, because obviously everywhere I've rented has already been, everywhere where I live is all like Victorian and older in terms of the houses. So all the houses I've lived in have been quite old, but they've always been renovated by the landlords prior to me moving in, and they have like modern amenities and all that. This house is pretty old. It still has rotary telephones mounted to the walls. And and it's just very, very old. Like the electrics are all very old. Everything's very old. The previous owner was old as well, and they died, I think, inside the house. So it's definitely haunted. So I'll do like a ghost hunting series on this channel once I move in. But it's just like the stress of like, I've got to modernize it, I've got to get the electrics all redone. I know that it's in pretty good nick. I got a good price on it because it's just gone to a family friend that just wants to get the house off her hands, and it's just had a brand new roof. It's great, so it's going to be good, but it's going to be stressful. I think the room I was planning on having my office has only got one plug socket, so I'll probably stick this computer in one of the spare bedrooms and then, you know, deal with the office later. But it's funny, I was being shown around the house, and I was like, this house is in really good nick for this price. And what I thought was weird is that usually when you have a house viewing and the owner has moved out, whatever, like it's just an estate agent showing you around, they will say things like, oh, the previous owner was very, like, I don't know, liked this sort of colour scheme, things like that. But the person that was showing me around always just refer to the previous owner as the deceased. I'm just like, that feels a bit weird calling this person the deceased. Like, we'll go into a room, it's like, the deceased liked radios, as we go into this room with like loads of speakers and cables and stuff. I'm just like, can we just call it the previous owner? It feels weird. There's a picture of him on the wall over there staring at me. So I thought that was kind of funny. But it should be good. I just kind of want it all to be over. So maybe like this time, 6 months from now, I'll be much more less stressed than I am now. I mean, it all could still fall through. I could have a building inspection done, and they're like, yeah, the gutter's about to collapse. It's going to be £30,000, and I'll be like, nah, I'm all right. Actually, I'll get somewhere else. But as far as I am aware, it all looks pretty good. Like I say, it's in pretty good nick. I viewed it with my dad, who works in construction. He was able to give his insight there. So it's looking pretty good. I'm excited about moving in, but at the same time, I'm pretty nervous. Speaking of construction, here we are, finishing off the construction of the station. That segue. Thanks you. Yes. I was playing around with different ways of getting this fence linked up. In the end, I think this worked out pretty well. I was going to use the chandeliers that I used in the roller coaster station, but I don't have that little sign above the roof that would be holding up the roller coaster track, so the chain from one of the chandeliers just sticks out like a sort of spire, and it looked a bit weird. So I went with sort of like those candle holders to light up the inside of the station. Then we can just light up the actual exterior of the ride, like that clock tower and just various bits of scenery. If I was like not lazy, I might have put them on trigger sequences so that everything lights up as the cars go round, but I don't know. That's a lot of effort, isn't it? So the final thing to do is the queue, and I was playing around with this queue for a while. I didn't really know what to do with it. in the end, I just did this like standard loop back. Okay, it didn't seem like I was spending a long time for you guys. There was a lot of footage I had to cut out to get to this kind of concise level of footage. And then it was like a struggle of like what to do with the rest of this, like this sort of gap in between the roller coaster entrance and the sleigh ride entrance. So what I thought about doing at first was build some flat rides in that little corner there, but it looked a bit naff. So I went with these Christmas shops. You may remember when I built the Christmas village, the look of the shops was inspired by what was his name? Bloopsy. I totally didn't just pause the video to have a look at the Steam Workshop to make sure I knew what their name was. Yeah, I got them from Bloopsy. I got the idea from Bloopsy. I thought, I can't be bothered to build my own buildings now. It's getting late and I want this series to be done before Christmas. Let's just use some of Bloopsy's actual buildings for the rest for this little corner there. So links to those 2 buildings are in the description if you'd like to download them for yourself. And then we just got to flush out the rest of the plaza, so we can stick in some lights. I really like those Victorian lights. They look pretty nice. We could also do the little lamps as well, just because the Victorian lights are very tall. They obscure the station somewhat, so I went with the lower down ones just for the bits right next to the station. Then we can just obviously incorporate some sort of supports for these paths that, fit in with the style of the rest of the building. But then we're pretty much done, so we just need to do the rest of this area of the park. I played around with a few things like Santa's grotto or like even like a reindeer barn at one point. But in the end, I just decided to go with some, I feel like with this park right now, we have a roller coaster and we have a Ferris wheel and we have a sleigh ride, but that's it. And for a theme park, I feel like we're somewhat lacking in terms of rides. I mean, admittedly, we have the cable car, like literally the cable car and like castle on the hill, whatever we called it last week, Mistletoe Mount. That would probably be enough for an attraction, but we like to go above and beyond in this series. And so we decided to add some more things like the roller coaster, the sleigh ride, and the Ferris wheel. But now we can say at the end of this episode, we'll have a couple more flat rides as well. So, I was just testing out the POV here. Worry not, there will be a POV at the end, although I forgot to record the audio when I was recording it at this point. So I've literally, just before I did this commentary, I re-recorded the POV. So you will see like other bits of the park all finished. Luckily, the quote-unquote spoilers are obscured by like terrain and trees and stuff like that, so it won't have too many spoilers, but you will notice a couple of rides that aren't currently here yet. But there we go, I went with these are both from the vintage pack. I like them because they have a really small footprint. Some of the rides have huge footprints, and so they're quite hard to incorporate naturally, especially in sort of compact areas like this one, but these ones don't, and they're very much like a feel of like temporary rides. So maybe when it's not winter time, they take them down and put them into storage. Seems a bit weird, I know. Normally it'd be the other way around, wouldn't it? You'd take them out for summer and then store them in the winter, but we do things differently over here, as we've established, and that's it. I remember actually on the subject of those buildings I placed, a lot of people criticised them, at least ones I built, but I built them based on those ones, so I guess it's the same sort of criticisms are applicable to them, in that the roof shape is not very good because snow will accumulate there and collapse it. My friends, you're not remembering something. This is a Lowne Aerospace, this park. We have heated roof tiles in this park, hence why there's no snow on the roofs. You see, I've killed so many birds with this stone because A, it means that the roofs structurally make sense. B, means I don't have to go through the painstaking process of placing snow to make them look believable, thus saving me time. And that's it, actually. So I only killed 2 birds with that one stone. But luckily, that is how the saying goes, so we're okay. And then I was just playing around with a somewhat simplistic sign, but also looks nice and fancy in keeping with the vintage theme. I went with sleigh slopes because I'm a big fan of alliteration. I'm in awe of alliteration. I was trying to come up with an alliteration phrasing there. Yeah. And then, just cover up the rest up with rocks and trees to kind of make it look all natural and in keeping, and that's pretty much it actually. And then I got rid of one of those snow boulders here and then just continued the fence so it looked a little bit more, I don't know, sensible in the design, and then we can light up the rest of the paths that aren't lit up. And there we go, and you can see guests are arriving, and currently right now it doesn't look like the paths are broken. Doesn't look like my staff are very happy though. That's why in next episode we're going to build a staff room to try and keep them happy. Unfortunately, it's to no avail, but I don't know if I should, I'll stop talking for the POV, and then I'll be back towards the end. And I think we're wrapping this thing. I'm going to start talking now to mask the guests who are currently trapped. There's an example of how the paths are broken in this game. The guests can't move. It's kind of a bummer. Maybe there'll be some patch or something that fixes it. But I hope you enjoyed this ride. There's going to be some links on screen. I'll show this nice little cinematic of what we have so far, and there's going to be some links on screen to the full playlist, a video chosen for you by YouTube's algorithm, as well as a link to subscribe. Check out the Patreon, Twitter, Discord in the description, as well as my Instagram. And that's it. Hope you enjoyed the rest of your Wednesday, my dudes, and Christmas when it comes around. Goodbye.